Hi children, I am going to start new history lesson and the title of the lesson is Independent India, the first 30 years, that is 1947 to 77. Independent India, the first 30 years, 1947 to 77. In this lesson, we are going to learn what are the social and economic and also political changes that took place in independent India during the first 30 years after independence, that is 47 to 77. Now see, this is a speech by B.R. Ambedkar, who was the chairman of the drafting committee. And in this speech, he expresses his concern about the social inequalities prevailing in the Indian society. He says in this speech that in politics, we have constitutionally recognized political equality. Political equality means giving right to vote to all the people without any discrimination. He says in his speech that we have constitutionally recognized political equality by providing right to vote to all the people. One man, one vote, and one vote, one value. And this is called political equality. And the same we are not able to apply in our social and economic life. We are not providing social equality or economic equality. And how long can we deny social and economic equality to the people? If we continue to deny it for a long time, that means we are putting our democracy at risk. And we must remove these social and economic inequalities as early as possible. Otherwise, there is a possibility that the people who are suffering from these inequalities may revolt and put an end to the democracy itself. Once again, you also read this speech. And the next one is the main challenges that were faced by India during the early years after independence were to maintain unity and integrity, to bring social and economic transformation, and smooth working of democratic system. And all these challenges are interrelated. For example, developmental goals and unity and integrity should not come at the cost of democracy. And even if we achieve development or unity and integrity, spoiling the democratic structure of the country, it is useless or meaningless. Now let us see the first challenge faced by independent India, and it is first general elections which were held in 1952. After independence, the first general elections were to be held in 1952. Elections are the first step to democracy because people elect their own representatives through elections. And for electing their representatives, they need right to vote. And unlike in many other Western countries, in India, the right to vote was given to all the people who were about 21 years of age. At that time, it was 21 years of age, and later it was made 18 years. So at a stage, all the people who were about 21 years of age, they were given the right to vote. And in other countries, right to vote was given to in different stages, like first propertied men who had properties, they were given, who were educated, they were given later. And later on, the propertied women and educated women were given. And after all this, when the women struggled for their right to vote, along with the men, then all the men and women also got the right to vote in Western countries. But in India, it was given at one stage to all men and women, irrespective of their caste, creed, religion, and it is known as universal adult franchise. Already you know the definition of universal adult franchise. For example, in Britain, all the women got the right to vote in 1928, and in Switzerland, 1971. And the first elections in independent India were a big challenge because majority of the population were illiterates. They did not know how to read and write. How can they indicate their choice? They have to read the ballot paper and they have to vote for a person of their choice. And if they are illiterate, they cannot indicate their choice. Election Commission was set up to conduct elections throughout the country. And electoral rolls were also prepared. What is an electoral roll? Electoral rolls means list of eligible voters. List of eligible voters or list of registered voters is called as electoral rolls. And these electoral rolls were prepared throughout the country. And to overcome the problem of illiteracy, the election commission came out with a great idea. What is that idea? Symbols from everyday life, which are well known to all the people, they were taken to represent political parties and candidates. Each political party and candidate, they were given a symbol from everyday's life so that they could easily identify it. And in these elections, each candidate was given a ballot box with the symbol of the party stuck outside the ballot box. So that by seeing to the symbol, the people could easily vote for the candidate of their choice. And the voters only had to drop the ballot paper in the ballot box of their candidate whom they preferred. So, being the first elections, the voters were encouraged to exercise their right to vote through campaigns. Many campaigns were held to encourage the people to exercise their right to vote, because first time they were going to exercise their right to vote, and many of them, they don't know what is this right to vote and what for they are exercising their right to vote, they don't know. So many campaigns were held to encourage the people to exercise their right to vote. Now here is an example of some villages, how the people were excited to vote for the first time. In some districts where there was parda system you might be knowing, Muslims, they cover their face, ladies. So that is called parda system. And in areas where parda system was there, polling booths were set up with entirely women staff, so that there will be no problem for these Muslim women to come and vote for their choice. In the same way, some villages, they voted as a body. That means all the people in the village, they voted for a candidate, for a single candidate, without any choice. They felt that this is the candidate we prefer, so they voted. The whole village voted for that. And in a village called in Assam, people from a tribal village, the day before the polling, they went to the polling station and they spent the night, the whole night they spent dancing and singing around the bonfires. And when the sunrise was there, when it was morning the next day, immediately they went to the booths and they exercised their right to vote. And in the same way, Pepsu village, from Pepsu village, the people could not decide to whom they have to vote. There were only two candidates contesting in the elections, so they could not make their choice. So what they did, they arranged a wrestling match between two young people representing both the candidates, and whoever wins the wrestling match, and he represents one candidate in the elections. So the whole village voted for that candidate. And many offerings also they brought along with them. The petitions, they brought letters and they dropped in the ballot boxes, and even they were begging for food and clothes also, and they dropped those papers also in the ballot boxes, because it was the first time for they were exercising their right to vote. They did not know what to do, and what they are doing they did not know. So they were doing different actions like this. Some of them, they brought petitions and they dropped these petitions also in the ballot boxes. Some, they demanded some food, some clothes. They brought some offerings also for the candidates and they dropped in the ballot boxes. Now, one party dominance in political system. What is this one party dominance? First elections in independent India were held in 1952, second general elections in 1957, and third general elections in 1962. And in these three first general elections and also in 1971 elections, the Indian National Congress won the elections, defeating all the other parties. Jawaharlal Nehru became the first Prime Minister. No other party could get more than 11% of the votes polled. And the Congress party could win 45% of the total votes cast. And thus, the Congress party formed the government at central level and also in many states where it won the elections. And it was termed as Congress system by many of the observers. Many of the observers called this as Congress system because the Congress party only won the elections in the first three general elections and also in 1971 elections. Congress party only formed the government at the center and also at state level in many of the states also. So it is called as Congress system by many of the observers. The Congress party had smaller groups within it, and these groups, though they differed on some policy issues, they shared in achieving the overall goals of the party. Now the question is how the Congress party could win all these elections continuously. The first three general elections and also 1971 elections, how the Congress party could win all these elections. And it was not that there were no other political parties which contested in the elections. So the Congress party could easily win the elections. If there are no other parties, Congress party can easily win the elections. It was not like that. If there are no other parties, it will be an undemocratic situation, because in democracy, multi-party system will be there. More than one party contest in the elections in a democracy, and multi-party system is one of the features of democracy. And it was not an undemocratic situation, because there were many other parties also which contested in the elections along with the Congress party. It was not an undemocratic situation. There were other parties also which contested in the elections, but they could not challenge the Congress party. Now, demand for state reorganization. Another challenge faced by independent India was demand for state reorganization on the basis of languages. Many of the people speaking a particular language, they demanded that a separate state should be formed for them based on the language, and these were called as linguistic states. Under the British rule, India was divided into three provinces: Calcutta, Madras and Bombay. These were the three provinces, and there were very large states like Bihar, central provinces, etc. And other than these, there were more than 550 princely states. And in all these regions, people speaking different languages were living. For example, you can see in the map here, down in the south, yellow color shows the Madras state. And in this Madras state, people speaking Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Orissa, Malayalam, Gondi were living together. Now, there was a demand that people speaking a particular language should be formed into a separate state, like Telugu speaking people into Andhra, Tamil speaking people into Tamil Nadu, etc. And for this, different campaigns were led, like Sanyukta Karnataka for uniting the people speaking Kannada language. It was Sanyukta Karnataka, and Sanyukta Maharashtra for uniting the Maharashtrians. Maharashtra, Sanyukta Maharashtra movement, Maha Gujarat movement, Gujarati speaking people. Demand for the state of Punjab for 6, merging Travancore and Cochin princely states, and all these were the demands made by the people. And the leaders feared that if this demand for linguistic states is fulfilled, it may lead to the breakup of the country. That was the fear of the Congress leaders. Because the leaders have already seen the consequences of partition of the country on the basis of religion. In 1947, when we got independence, the country was partitioned on the basis of religion. It was formed into India and Pakistan. Muslim majority areas into Pakistan and the rest India. And many people, after partition, already we learnt in 16th lesson, many people were killed on both sides. And these linguistic states may be a threat to the security and stability of India. And they may spoil the integrity, national integrity also. If separate states are formed for each and every language speaking people, it may be a threatening to the national integrity also. And with that fear, the government left these demands unheard. And it did not respond, though the Congress party itself was formed on the basis of language, and it promised to restructure the country on the same lines on the basis of language. The Congress party did not react to the demand of the people. And of all these movements, the most vigorous was the demand of Telugu state. The Andhra Mahasabha played an important role in this movement, which continued even after independence. And because the Congress party did not accept this demand for Telugu state, in the first general elections, the Telugu people did not vote for the Congress party. They voted for parties which supported their linguistic states. And as a result, the Congress party was defeated in the Telugu speaking areas in the first general elections. It could not win. And actually, Nehru, the then Prime Minister of India, was not opposed to these linguistic states. He felt that this is not the right time to take up such issues immediately after independence. After 200 years of colonial rule, India got independence, and it was in the process of consolidating itself. And after some time, such issues like formation of linguistics can be taken up. That was the opinion of Jawaharlal Nehru. Now, State Reorganization Act 1956. Now, Potti Sriramulu, demanding the formation of a separate Telugu speaking state, he went on hunger strike for 58 days, and after 58 days, he died after fasting for 58 days. In October 1952, he passed away. And consequently, the states after his death, the states of Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu were created. And in August 1953, the States Reorganization Commission was appointed. In 1953, States Reorganization Commission was appointed, and there were 3 members in this commission: Fazal Ali, K.M. Panikkar, and Hridayanath Kunjru. And these 3 members, they were asked to tour throughout the country and submit their report, whether these linguistic states can be formed or not. And on the basis of the report submitted by the State Reorganization Commission, in 1956, the State Reorganization Act was passed by the Indian Parliament. And according to this act, 14 states and 6 union territories were created first. And please remember that while creating these linguistic states, tribal languages like Gondi, Santali or Oron, they were not taken into consideration. Only languages which were spoken by the majority, by the dominant populations, they were considered for creation of linguistic states. And reorganization of states on linguistic basis showed how the demands of the majority were fulfilled, and also showed how the government resolved a problem by coming down from its own standpoint. Because in the beginning, the government was not favorable to the formation of these linguistic states. But when the demand was made by the majority, it came down from its standpoint and it created linguistic states. Now, social and economic changes. The next challenge faced by independent India was social and economic changes to provide social, economic and political justice and equality of status and opportunity to all the people. And in 1950, Planning Commission was set up within a month of the inauguration of our new constitution. And Nehru believed that planned development would remove the divisions of caste, religion, community, etc. And it will also help India to emerge as a strong and developed nation. Prime Minister himself was the chairman of the Planning Commission. The main aim of this Planning Commission was to introduce 5-year plans for the development of the country. Now, what are these 5-year plans? Seeing to the backwardness of any sector or any area, the government decides in which area it has to allocate more funds for the next 5 years. Suppose the education sector is lagging behind. Then the government will allocate more funds for the development of education, like building schools, providing infrastructure in the schools, recruitment of faculty, etc., etc. And during the next 5 years, for the next 5 years, the government plans and then implements it. First 5-year plan was started in 1951 to 56. It was the first plan period. Second plan period 56 to 61. And in this plan, in the first 5-year plan, priority was given to agriculture to increase the food production. First 5-year plan also stressed on the need for development of transport and communications along with agriculture. But agriculture was given the first priority to increase the food production. And for agricultural transformation, Nehru adopted 3-fold strategy, which included 3 components. They were land reforms, agricultural cooperatives, and local self-government. This was the 3-fold strategy adopted by Nehru's government for bringing agricultural reforms. Now, the aim of these land reforms was to see that the land belongs to the tiller. Dunne vadide bhumi visenu, that is, land belongs to the tiller. That is the main aim of these land reforms. And as part of these land reforms, three types of land reforms were introduced. First of all, Jamindari system, it was abolished. Jamindari system, it was introduced by the British government. In 1793, Cornwallis introduced permanent settlement system, and as part of this permanent settlement system, Jamindari system, Mahalwari system and Rautwari system were introduced. Under Jamindari system, the small farmers or the owners of the land, they were being exploited by the Jamindars. So immediately after independence, the first step taken by Nehru's government was abolition of Jamindari system. So Jamindari system was abolished, and tenancy reforms for the welfare of small farmers, many reforms were introduced, and land ceiling was also introduced. Land ceiling means a limit was fixed to own the land. If a person owns land beyond that limit, that land will be confiscated by the government and then it will be distributed to the landless people. That is land ceiling. These are the three types of land reforms introduced by Nehru's government. And the second one is agricultural cooperatives. The Nehru's government also introduced agricultural cooperatives to provide inputs like seeds, manure, fertilizers, etc. at subsidized rates to the farmers. And thirdly, the aim of local self-government is to ensure whether these land reforms were carried out properly or not, and the cooperatives function for the welfare of all the people or not. To see this, local self-government was set up. Now, already the three land reforms, once again I am repeating, the Jamindari system which was introduced by the Britishers in India was abolished after independence. The second one was tenancy reforms were introduced for the welfare of the small farmers, and the third one was Land Ceiling Act. A ceiling was fixed to own the land. And these land reforms, they were introduced but they were not implemented wholeheartedly. Jamindari system was abolished. Though land ceiling was fixed, redistribution of land to the landless did not take place. As a result, the rich and the powerful continued to be the owners of much of the land, and Dalits continued to be the landless. And to some extent, the Dalits were benefited by the abolition of forced labor, because forced labor was abolished by the government, and also untouchability was abolished through Article 17. So because of these two actions, the Dalits were benefited. And in the first 5-year plan, already I told you agriculture was given more importance, and as part of it, many hydroelectric projects were built to produce energy and to provide irrigation to increase food production. And thus it helped both the agriculture sector and also the industrial sector. During the second 5-year plan, industries were given importance so that if industries are increased, factories come up. A large number of factories will come up, and more number of people will shift to towns and cities to work in factories and also in the service sector, and they can increase their standard of living by working in the factories. Now, foreign policy and wars. Now let us see what is India's foreign policy. When India became independent in 1947, it was at that time, just before that only, after the Second World War. Second World War came to an end in 1945. And after the end of the Second World War, the world got divided into two power blocks, the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc. Western Bloc was headed by USA, and it was also called as Capitalistic Bloc. And the Eastern Bloc was headed by USSR, and it was called as Socialist Bloc. And these two were powerful blocs, and they were trying to force the newly independent countries to come and join their bloc. If more countries join their bloc, suppose more countries are joining USA Western Bloc, then USA will become the supreme power in the world. And if more number of countries join the Eastern Bloc, USSR will become the most powerful country. So to become the supreme power or the most powerful country in the world, they were asking the newly independent countries to join their bloc. So it was at that time that India got independence from colonial rule. And there was a choice before Indian government also, either to join the Western Bloc or the Eastern Bloc. But the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, he followed a policy of not joining either of the blocs. He remained neutral. He tried to maintain an equal distance from these two power blocs. without joining any of the blocs. And he took an independent position in foreign policy. And this foreign policy is called as non-aligned movement. So India's foreign policy is non-aligned movement. Non-aligned means not joining any of the blocs. So it was pioneered by Jawaharlal Nehru. Non-aligned movement, in short we call it as NAM, N-A-M, NAM. It was started by Jawaharlal Nehru, and without joining either of the blocs, he wanted to remain independent, neutral, in an equal distance from both the blocs. And he took an independent position in foreign policy. And this foreign policy of India is called as non-aligned movement. And many of the other newly independent countries also, like Indonesia, Egypt, Yugoslavia, all these countries also, they followed our non-aligned movement. They also joined hands with India, and they too followed the same policy. Without joining either of the blocs, they remained neutral in international politics. And with our China, which is our immediate neighboring country, Nehru signed Panchashil Agreement. Panchashil Agreement means 5 principles are there in this agreement. Both the countries agreed to these 5 principles and they signed this agreement. It is very famous one, Panchashil Agreement. We are going to learn about this Panchashil Agreement in more detail in our next chapters. So, the first and the foremost important thing is they signed an agreement not to interfere in each other's internal affairs. That is the most important principle of these 5 principles. Non-interference in each other's internal affairs. And however, India at this time, it was forced to fight 2 wars. That was in 1940, immediately after independence in 1948, we fought a war with Pakistan over Kashmir issue, and in 1962 we fought a war with China. This 1962 war with China, it was unexpected. So, we had to face many losses. Both human life and money also was lost in this 1962 war with China because it was unexpected. I am stopping this here. It will be continued in the next class.